At the time of its cancellation, Law and Order was tied. It was the second longest running show in primetime television history. It shared that second spot with Gunsmoke. And both Gunsmoke and Law and Order defer to the top one, The Simpsons. For 20 years, you would hear that Law and Order sound, that all too familiar sound. Dun dun. No matter where you were in the house, when you heard dun dun, you had to rush, drop everything, rush to see what was going to happen. And you get dragged in, so you got another mystery case to be solved. I reckon the show was so popular because it pitted good versus evil. And that always makes for a good story. You pulled for McCoy, Lenny Briscoe, because they were going after the smug and the arrogant. And we wanted the smug and the arrogant to get their day, to get what they deserved. We grew to know Lenny and all those characters so well. Their misgivings, their faults, the good in them. They became so familiar to us, almost like family. So for all the years I've watched Law and Order, and still to this day watch reruns if I hear the dun-dun. I lose another hour of my life trying to follow the story. As much as I liked it, there were times where I get so aggravated. Just as McCoy is about to put the person away, as the person on the witness stand is just volunteering all sorts of information that's going to give them away, the defense attorney rises and says, I object, and then the judge says, please disregard what that defendant just said. Jury, strike that from the record. Disregard. How do you disregard something that is said in a room full of people? You can't take it back. You can't pretend as if it never happened. How do you disregard something like that? You look around the nave this morning and the color blue gives it away. We are here beginning Advent, this first Sunday of Advent. And for many people, Advent can be a bit of a challenge, a difficult season, because we know Christmas is coming in 26 days. And where you have it marked on the calendar, you've been to them all. You've been to them all because we know the Christ child is coming to Bethlehem. And that's the hard part of that. You know how the story ends. And so what do you do with the stuff before the story ends? You disregard it entirely, knowing that the best is yet to come? Or do you work with, live with, wait for all that happens before Christmas, before Bethlehem? In Advent, we wait for God's anointed, His Messiah. In Advent, we read from the prophets like Jeremiah, who says, the days are surely coming. The days are surely coming when God will fulfill His promise. In Advent, we long for all things to be brought under God's kingdom and reign. In Advent, we hope for another day. In Advent, we hope. And yet, our hope can be made more difficult because we know how it ends. And so maybe we say to ourselves, because we know how the story ends, I will hope, because hoping is not really difficult. Why bother with all this Advent stuff? Our culture certainly instructs us to disregard what you hear about Advent, because now we can even go Christmas shopping on Thanksgiving Day. We've almost lost Thanksgiving now. In this process, our culture just says, disregard all of that. Let's get to it. Let's get to Bethlehem. Let's get to the tree and exchanging gifts. It's easy to rush ahead. And yet, for many people in our world, they don't quite know how the story is going to end in their lives who live in areas where there is distress among the nations. You heard this mentioned from Jesus. He tells his disciples, he tells the crowd, there is a day coming when all of creation changes. The sun and the moon, it all changes. And on earth there is great distress among the nations. There is a fear, fainting, foreboding of events that are to come. So it's not easy for those people during Advent, because they want a today that was unlike yesterday, and they hope for a tomorrow that is certainly different from the one they lived in. They truly are living in that world of hope and expectation, longing for, pleading for God to intervene and do something. Jesus says there will be a day of distress. And we certainly see that all around the world, don't we? It doesn't take long to read the news, to turn on the television. We see place after place, town after town, country after country, riddled with violence, misgivings. And so, if you are ever tempted to think that the words of Jesus and the words of the Bible are just this sweet by and by, that Jesus just had nice words for people, and the Bible teaches you to be nice. Let's not forget that in the first century, in the world that Jesus lived in, Jesus lived under an occupying army his whole life, his ministry, his family, his friends. All he could see and know was shaped by an occupying army which controlled his movements, told him who he was, told him how he ranked next to the emperor. And some things have not changed in 2,000 years. We've redrawn the boundaries of many of the nations, but yet anger and violence are still with us. Paul, writing to those Christians at church in Thessalonica, he wrote to them about hope, not giving up. He wrote about the days of God that were surely coming. I believe that Paul firmly believed the world as he knew it was ending. Certainly the world that affected him as he knew it. The world was coming to an end. So he exhorted followers of Jesus to live in a certain way, because the days are coming. The days are not. That is the world Paul lived in. And for many people, that's the world they live in. Maybe the world won't end, but life as they know it will. Life as they know it is very tenuous. It's easy for me to stand here and say to those folks, or even to you, oh, just have hope. Look up. Look on the bright side. Bear with it. Hang in there. It's all going to win. Just have hope. It's easy to say. Admittedly, because I, thank God, don't live under an occupying army. I have one that keeps our freedom safe. A wonderful thing. So I don't quite know what it's like to live in other parts of the world and have hope that I will have something to eat tomorrow or today. Because I have the luxury of a lot of choices. I have the luxury of so many things. So while we may not know hopelessness because of where we live, while we may not understand that hopelessness around the world, I dare say there is all kinds of other hopelessness that lives here in Burke, Springfield, and Fairfax County. It's a hopelessness that plays out all too often in high schools in Fairfax County. The number of young people who end their life because they have no hope. The young people who end their life because they can't see a better tomorrow. They can't even see a better today. They feel out of options. There are many people in our world and relationships. We wonder where the relationships are going. Maybe we're not as hopeful about those relationships, and so we struggle. We wonder what tomorrow is going to bring because we can't figure out today. All of us, no matter where you live, no matter the government we live under, we all, as human beings, have certain hopes, longings. And it's Advent that we spend time talking about those hopes and dreams and longings. We don't just push them aside and say, we're just going to get to December 25th, open the presents, sing some nice Christmas carols, stand by the fire, and all is going to be warm and fuzzy. Cozy isn't this week. We don't jump ahead to Christmas. Let's stay for a while in Advent. Let's stay for a while with others around us, our friends, neighbors, family members. Let's stay with them in this time of questions they have, in this time, these weeks of great longing and hopes and dreams. Let's stay with them and not just rush ahead to Bethlehem. Let's stay with people who are working for hope. Let's be with people who are trying to make peace, or wage peace around this world. Let's be with those who are trying to invite us. Let's work with them. Let's stay with those who believe they are forgotten. Some of you may recall Father Fetty Daib, who was here last month, led our Shrine Month retreat. When I was taking him to the airport, I asked him, Fetty, what is one thing that you hope, what is one thing you hope that we got out of this weekend? Tim, I hope what you got out of it is what we tell everyone. We who live in Palestine, we who Christians are suffering so much. I wish you would tell everyone, please don't forget us. Please don't forget us. That we are here. We are suffering. Trying to make sense of the world. So let's be with those people. Let's support them. Pray for them. Let's work with them for peace and for hope. Václav Havel was a notable, famous Czech playwright. Over the years, he became a dissident, was arrested at one time because he wanted to overthrow communism. Later in his life, with the breakup of Czechoslovakia, Havel was elected the first democratically elected president of the Czech Republic. A playwright, Paul. This is what Havel said about hope. Hope is a state of mind, not of this world. Hope, in this deep and powerful sense, it's not the same as joy that all things are going well, nor is hope a willingness to invest in something just because it's headed for success. But rather, hope is an ability to work for something that is good and right, because it is good and right to work for that. That is hope. Something we work for, not just given to us. Hope. I'm curious, this first Sunday of Advent, the weeks ahead, the days ahead, before we get to Bethlehem, what are you hoping for? What are you hoping for? As we talk about the Messiah, the anointed who's coming to Bethlehem, All that we sing this Christmas is Advent time. All that we hear from the prophets, promising a new day when the Messiah will come among us and bring all things under God's reign. What is that like for you? What does that look like? What do you hope for? Don't worry, I'm not going to call on any of you. What do you hope for? You may not be a refugee fleeing war. You may not be a young person contemplating suicide. You may be gainfully employed. You may have enough to eat. You may not hope for many of these things, but I would guess that we all have a bit of anxiousness with everything going on in the world. Advent, the month of December, the weeks ahead, all refer to darkness. And Advent isn't just literally that the days are growing shorter and there's more dark for us to live with. It's more than just the time of the home. We all know too well, we've all been affected by a darkness of a very different kind, a darkness of evil. It is into that darkness that God comes and reveals himself in Jesus. Christmas is coming in 26 days, God willing. It's coming in 26 days. And we're waiting for this Christ child. Let us not disregard Advent. Don't strike Advent from the record. Don't ignore it. Let's not disregard it. Let's sit in the middle of Advent to be with each other in these days that we hope so much. Let's not disregard Advent. Instead, let us work for hope. Let us work for hope. In the name of God.